Lovely. Well, Phil, thank you very much for being invited along again, and congratulations on the numbers today. It's brilliant to be in a session almost broke teams. Anyway, my presentation today is about some work that we have been doing at Portsmouth around learning design called Enable. So I'd like to take you through the process, the key features of Enable, and the kind of its impact it's actually having on us at Portsmouth. So it is really hard to believe that it's almost 3 years ago that we all went into lockdown, but we are now living with the legacy, if you like, of that transition to a post-COVID higher education landscape. And our approach now, the Enable approach, has very much come out of that, the legacy, if you like, of our transition to from COVID. And one of the first things that we did in March 20 is we created our institutional strategy. I'm sure you all did. You all sat there in groups and thought, right, how we come out of this. So our initial approach was called blended and connected learning. And that created a landscape where we identified a number of key priorities to engage students. And we are very much operating within the context of that blended and connected approach at the moment. And I will come back to this as we actually go through. But what it's evolved into is the university's new digital success plan. Like I said on the side, a blended and connected ecosystem that is supporting transformational learning. But we needed a mechanism for that to really instigate change, to develop change, and to bring colleagues across the university with us on that journey. Because what we discovered, I think the big element of what we discovered during lockdown was that there was far too much focus on delivery. We were delivering content, and this is kind of like my dean slides, and you all know Ali Armelini. This is his favourite slide that we all use, that in higher education, we are not Amazon. We are not Deliveroo. We are higher education. So we need to think a little bit more critically about the nature of learning design and the types of experiences that we're actually creating that really do achieve a high level of engagement with our student body. So that's where Enable started. And I'm going to cover a lot of ground today, so the slides will be available, but there's a link here to a very detailed Padlet that you're very welcome to look at afterwards, which provides a very thorough overview of the Enable concept and the kind of and how it actually works. So Enable itself is based around the principles of active blended learning. And in particular, within that, we put a great deal of emphasis on a couple of those priorities. Context over content, getting colleagues to really think about activity creation, both asynchronous and synchronous, but also things like the effective use of technology to support innovation, to support engagement that is pedagogically led. Not just we've got the technology, we're actually going to use it. But the most critical thing with Enable is it's about encouraging and facilitating a much more team-based approach to learning design. And within that, we're thinking about encouraging staff to think about the nature of activities, pre-sessional sense-making activities, the kind of activities we're actually doing with students in the session, whether that be face-to-face or on campus, but also the kind of activities that we are creating post-session. So collectively, this learning environment that's clearly scaffolded, but with very engaging types of activities actually underpinning it. And the Enable process is owned by the teams that actually come into it. It's facilitated by a team of learning designers, and I'll talk about the ecosystem in a minute, but they very much own the process. They come in, they define the nature of the Enable experience that they want in terms of their activities, the kind of pedagogic areas that they want to focus on. The learning designers will work with colleagues to create a series of outputs that are relevant to new program development, module enhancement, or particular themes, whether it be the use of technology, employability, or EDI. So the Enable ecosystem forms of 3 component parts. The first is we have an initial DNA meeting, so design needs analysis. And in that initial meeting, we are afforded the opportunity to talk with a course team, a program team, a module team, about what they would actually like to get from the Enable process. So we can focus on different elements. They may wish to come in with a particular focus on we're creating a new course, we'd like to do some storyboarding around new course development, or it may be they want to do something more specific around a particular module, or they want to come in and perhaps use Enable to focus on a particular aspect of provision, whether it be support for employability, the use of technology, and so on. So that DNA meeting sets the scene, and it allows us to listen to what colleagues in different faculties and course areas actually want. We then take them into an Enable workshop, and I've just put on the screen there an indicative example of what that workshop looks like. And that is very much an indicative example, because what we find is that the workshops change. There's perhaps no such thing as a standard in Enable workshop, because they are very much guided and structured around the DNA meeting in terms of what colleagues want to get. And in doing these workshops, Enable is not new. Enable is drawing on learning design models out there already, ABC, Carpe Diem, but we have tried to create a bit of a hybrid that perhaps gives a little bit more flexibility around the kind of resources and focus within our Enable construct. We then follow it up with a review meeting, perhaps 2 to 4 weeks afterwards, to make sure that the teams are progressing with the identified actions that have come from the Enable workshop. It also gives us an opportunity to identify any barriers or challenges that got in the way, and to also have a conversation with them about any additional support they need to achieve the targets that have been identified. They may want to come into a subsequent Enable meeting, or perhaps they require some additional CPD to support their engagement. So what we've actually done to support this is we have created a whole raft of Enable workshop materials, and these are available on our website, enable.port.ac.uk. They're available for use, you can download them. But Enable, they've been designed in such a way to create and support course creation, module creation, what we call context creation, to help colleagues think about the nature of the activities that they want to generate. And there's some just indicative examples on the screen there just to show. We've also used Laureate as an underpinning framework to help colleagues think about learning types, and that's very clearly embedded in our resources around creating different types of activity. And central to this is the storyboarding component that colleagues will engage in, and that storyboarding can be at a course level, it can be at a module level, or we can really drill it down to highlight particular areas that the course team wish to focus on. And again, we use a variety of different storyboarding formats to help colleagues engage and map out as a team, may I add. It's that team-based approach, that articulation around the shared values, which underpins and is characteristic of the Enable process. And at the end, we get the team to think about action planning just to guide their next steps in terms of where they actually go forward with the process. Now, we do this, and we do this centrally, but we have also employed a team of learning designers that operate out in the faculties. We have 15, I think, Enable facilitators, and we bring them back very regularly, and they work at that local level within the faculties and within the courses to identify colleagues that need or would like to engage with Enable, and they are responsible for developing that engagement locally with clear outcomes coming from that activity. We've also created a series of resources to support it. This is our Explore toolkit, and this is a Denali-based resource that again is public, but it's designed to highlight the value of different types of technologies out there and how they can be used. In terms of impact, I've just copied here there's a photo that shouldn't be there. A photograph there, sorry, it's in the way, but we have run so far about 132 DNA meetings. We've got 144 Enables, and we've put about 450 odd staff through the Enable process. So it's growing. The feedback that we actually get from staff is showing anecdotally at the moment, because we are doing a bit more of a structured research process on this, but we are seeing an impact on teams and the value in developing a team-based approach to learning design, and we're also beginning to see that impact at an individual level in terms of how it's shaping individual perceptions and confidence around engaging with learning design. My other job at Portsmouth is I look after all things fellowship via our experiential route, And over the last year, I think it's safe to say I have seen more reference to Enable, and I have seen clearer articulation in area of activity A1 around learning design and confidence in the engagement with ABL principles and the evident impact that's having on subsequent approaches to learning design, student engagement, and student experience. Some issues that have come out, of course, engagement, getting the teams to engage has been, why are we here is a very common question. Colleagues not perhaps seeing the value of it in the first place, but we do have our success stories where we do win over those perhaps more intransigent colleagues by the end of a morning. But we have noticed it can become a bit of a focal point for local tensions around process and organisational, wider institutional concerns. And we've also recognised that effective facilitation is underpinned by our team of facilitators, and they have come a long way since we started. And the ability of our facilitators with an Enable meeting to, shall we say, go off-piste in terms of an Enable workshop, and to be able to respond to the kind of conversations and narratives that emerge when we're running Enable with a particular team. Prerequisites, we've noticed that having, you know, a threshold knowledge, for example, how to write effective learning outcomes underpins an Enable workshop. And we're now looking at a more kind of like detailed impact study going forward. And just to finish, going forward, our key next steps, well, course, we're building Enable into our course approval process. So any new courses will need to go through Enable. And again, that's the process on the screen there. So that this is very much the nature of one of our Enable workshops at a course level, to capture the overview of courses that they can then go into the course approval process. And our success with Enable has led us to create a new Level 7 professional development module, which we started a couple of weeks, which is run by a colleague. And that's proving very successful in terms of supporting our existing population of online course developers, learning designers, and staff that work in a more support capacity across the university as well. And just finally say, we are very open. If anybody would like to be enabled, would like to have an Enable run for a course team, then please get in touch. We'll be very happy to work with you. Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you for the doing that at such short notice as well. We have run out of time, but I'm going to suggest that we kind of overrun by just a couple of minutes because there are a few questions that have come in. I do have some here, so what I'll do is I'll just ask the first one, and then if you could have a look in the chat, Andy, at some of the others, that would be really helpful. We do have one from Marta, and she has said, does the DNA meeting include learner analysis?
Well, yes. So when the DNA meeting is our first point of contact with a team, and in that team, we ask the team to bring with them evidence of an area that they would like to work on. So no DNA meeting is the same. And we do ask them to say, right, what would you like to focus on? So if a team have been through their learner analytics and have spotted issues or gaps where they need support, that often then becomes the focus of the subsequent Enable meeting. So as you can imagine at the moment, a lot of the teams that we're putting through Enable, the first stop in those kind of like analytics is you know, responding to poor NSS scores or areas where they recognise the need for enhancement.
Great, thank you. And I do have one more as well, just a quick one from Mike Wald, and he's asked, is there any evidence of benefit for students with this?
We are in early days. This has been running since the start of lockdown. So as you can imagine, we're running through the process now where the impact of Enable is becoming evident. Anecdotally, we're seeing changes in practice, but we are about to embark on a much more detailed impact study, more longitudinal impact study with staff, and then to see if we can track the impact of this on particular program areas. So that is work in progress. But anecdotally, we think it's having an impact. But again, further research is needed on that as we actually go forward, and that's on our plan.
Great, thank you. Very early days, but really promising as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing with us.
Thanks for inviting me again, Phil. Appreciate it.